When it comes to the affliction of Kaede Asasagawa, or her puberty syndrome, it's actually quite interesting because this particular syndrome is based on something that is very real and quite frightening. A fugue state, or dissociative fugue, is a physiological and neurological condition involving a loss of personal identity, memory, and a sudden impulsive trip or journey. It is often triggered by severe emotional trauma and is a defense mechanism where the person unconsciously disassociates from painful experiences. A person in this state may appear normal, but is confused by their identity and may even adopt a new one. When Kaede went through what she went through with her fellow classmates, this is exactly what happened. She was hospitalized for her state of being, and in being in that place, in that dark place, she disassociated herself with her problems, with her trouble, and that created this new identity, this identity that was completely reliant on her brother, Sakuta, because she didn't want to leave the house. She didn't want to associate with anyone else. What's even more frightening, though, is that this type of thing is actually common. Not necessarily the fugue state, but the little voice inside our heads that happens when a callous tongue speaks against us. People may call it the voice in our heads. We call it the enemy. The tongue is powerful. It can bring life, or it can bring the opposite. It can bring death. When Kaede's classmates so callously threw out those insults, telling her that she's worthless and useless, and she's fake, and that she's all of these horrible, horrible things, it affected Kaede in a horrible way. She may not have given up on life completely, but she did give up something else. She gave up her freedom because she was wrapped in these chains of fear and of this belief that maybe they were right. Maybe her existence is a burden. And so her mind did away with that existence and tried to adopt a new one. It regressed into a more childlike state as a way to escape. But deep down, even when Kaede was in this state, she knew that something was wrong. She knew that this wasn't the way it was supposed to be. Kaede's experience, her puberty syndrome, or her attack, is one of the overarching themes of Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl. Thankfully, it doesn't just end in fear and regret. Because over time, when Kaede started to understand that something was wrong, that she needed to work past this. She began to change. But before the healing can begin, sometimes we have to go through the steps. And so, Kaede's first step was disassociation. Her second step was acceptance, but not acceptance of her situation, more acceptance of the shield that her mind had given her. She began to accept this new identity. She began to accept this fear. She refused to leave the house. She refused to really to live. She pushed aside the one person who was within her school career that actually cared. We don't meet her until about halfway through, but there is one student who knocks on their door and is asking Sakuta how she's doing because she cares. She's scared for Kaede. And she doesn't even know the extent of how much this affected her. She just wants her friend back. The good thing is that by the time we're at that point, after time and time again of refusing to accept people, Sakuta brings Mai around. And granted, at first Mai is dealing with her own thing, and it's difficult for her, and at first Kaede is afraid of her, and she's a little bit upset that Sakuta has brought her around, and she doesn't want Mai to steal Sakuta away from her. But in time, by being there and by encouraging Kaede with words of life, Mai becomes the big sister that Kaede had never had. And it begins to replace the loss in such a way that in time she's able to learn to trust Mai completely, just as she does Sakuta. Kaede learns and she understands that isolation is sometimes it can be used to ready you for something better, but other times isolation is a trap. Other times isolation is loneliness. Other times isolation is a pit. Big Sister Mai begins to encourage Kaede. Just as maybe sometimes when we fall into this trap of, listening to the people that maybe we shouldn't listen to, someone else comes into our lives and speaks life into us, And we begin to make our way out. Because those people are put into our lives for a reason. In time, after accepting Mai, she begins to accept other people, including Mai's younger stepsister, who actually becomes a very, very good friend to Kaede. They become very close. And it's not just her. She becomes closer with Tomoe and Futaba, as each of them in their own way begin to show Kaede encouragement that replaces the loss. That replaces the pain that covers it. They begin to help Kaede to trace over her permanent scars. Until she gains the courage she wants to fight past it. She wants to be able to come back into the world, come into society again. She wants to leave the house. She wants to go back to school. She becomes so encouraged that she wants to reach these goals. And it's hard for her at first. Of course it is, because she's only known this for so long. This isolation, this other self. She doesn't, even though she wants to, she doesn't quite know how to push past them. But with the encouragement of everyone, she begins to, and she takes little steps, and then bigger steps, and then bigger steps until she tells Sakuta, no, I don't want to take a break. I want to do this. I want to get past this. How many times have you encountered something like this where you know something is wrong and you want to push past it? You need the connection. You need the encouragement of others in order to do so. We believe that it's no coincidence the people that come into our lives. God puts people in our lives for a reason or a season. These people that came into Kaede's life were there for a reason. They were there to cover the loneliness so that she could move on. And of course, that led to something frightening again. Because right as she had just pushed past the point where she was reaching her goals, she had another breakdown. She was hospitalized once again. And this time they were told that it was because the old memories. The old Kaede was trying to push forward, trying to make its way out. And that was a heavy thing to deal with, because not only had Kaede known only this for so long, so had Sakuta. And so Sakuta struggled with the idea that this Kaede may disappear, that this Kaede may no longer exist. He was happy for her because she was able to push past, but then there was a roadblock. And suddenly, now Sakuta needed the encouragement. And he found it from an old friend. We were not designed to be alone. We need each other for the highs and the lows. And this is a great showing of just that. Because Kaede, who was broken, who had listened to the callous tongues of people who didn't care, finally was able to listen to the living tongues of those who did. And in doing so, she was able to find her voice again. There's a lot of bumps and ups and downs in this story, but it should be so encouraging. Because Mai and the others that helped her had love and kindness and tenderness. And they spoke life into a broken spirit. So that she could graduate from this regressed, scared child to a young lady who not only was able to go back to school, she was able to get a job at the restaurant where Sakuta worked. She was able to gain new friends. She was able to get her old friend back. She was able to live. That is the story. That is the encouragement of Kaede Asasakawa.